Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we are joined by Simon Ludgate, a filmmaker and Reiki healer, who is he's on this very similar path that we're on, which is to explore the edges of the unknown. So strap in as we examine those edges right now. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today. You said it's 8 o'clock where you're at. Where is it that you're coming from?
Sunny London in England.
London, very nice. Now, in London, are there any kind of local legends that kind of got you involved in the investigations of that you explore in your series?
So many. Like a lot of the world's capitals that have been around for a long time, London is absolutely full of haunted locations, magic, weird things. The way that the whole city is constructed is very interesting and very strange. It has the sort of actually has a similar kind of magical outlay to Washington, DC, with lots of non-coincidental connections to the constellation of Orion, like ancient Egypt and Washington. It's a very, very interesting place to live, and it is full of ghosts and spirits and stories. You know, it's made famous by Jack the Ripper, who was apparently a doctor who was a mass murderer. He used to eviscerate his victims. He's a very famous character. We have the Tower of London, which is almost 2,000 years old, which is the most incredibly atmospheric place to visit. I use a little gadget called an electromagnetic field meter, which measures electromagnetics. So if you put it next to a microwave, you know, the needle, because the microwave's alternating current, will bounce up and down.
Right.
And when you go around the Tower of London, it does the same thing, which is fascinating. And every time I go there, it sucks all the energy out of me. But of course, it has all that history with people who are put in the tower to rot, who are executed, who are brought in through Traitor's Gate, which is like a little boat access gate, which is very private, with a kind of portcullis that goes up rather than down. And people used to be brought in, queens, princes, vagabonds, thieves, into the Tower of London and tried and either executed or imprisoned. So it's yeah, I mean, it goes on. I mean, I could do a whole hour and a half about how wacky London is.
Okay, so but as a young man, there must have been something that kind of drove you to look at kind of the paranormal in particular. Was there anything that kind of touched your life that?
Well, it wasn't the location of London so much. It was more about my circumstances, because I have worked as a documentary TV director for all the major channels like Discovery, National Geographic, ITV here, the BBC, so on and so forth. And I did a lot of I specialized in science documentaries, and my science documentaries took me all around the world to some really interesting places. And I gradually found that I had a connection to the the other side in that process, because a lot of what I did was to do with disasters. So you'd have 90,000 dead in Pakistan, about the same in Haiti after the earthquake, and I used to be there like 2 weeks after the thing had happened, because we'd been making a documentary for Channel 4, the BBC, or ITV here about why it had happened. But you'd have a lot of people who died traumatically in a very short time, which is not something that most people get to experience. And that changed it made me realize that I had an incredibly strong attachment to the dead. And I started training and working as what became, I suppose, the best way to describe it is a shaman. And I've done a lot of work with neither camp, so a foot in the living and a foot in the realm of the dead, which is the whole definition of a shaman. Really, is somebody who's able to connect between the two and work between the two at the same time. So it was my work experience rather than living in London that did it. But London is a very spiritual place. It's a very inspiring place. Has a lot of history. Funnily enough, my family are actually connected to King Lud. My surname is Ludgate,
Right.
and there is actually a gate in the city of London called Ludgate, which is where we came from. And King Lud was the king, the Anglo-Saxon king, who was the first person to make camp in the area that became London, long before the Romans turned up, so 3,000 years ago.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Coincidental, but I looked into it through my family tree and traced us all the way back through the city of London, Ludgate. My family were members of the Luddites. Again, Ludgate. We were members of the Luddites, who were very much against the introduction of Caxton's printing press, which was one of the first actual presses that would print books. I'm ashamed to say that my family were responsible for smashing up his printing press, because I'm a big techno lover and early adopter of technology, and it goes all the way back to King Lud.
Look at that. How many centuries ago was King Lud? That's got to be what, 7th century?
Slightly earlier than that.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, then you're in great company. I mean, we've our families have brought us across the pond, so to speak, and but yeah, my family history goes way back centuries and centuries. My last name is Richardson, as in Richard the Conqueror, and William the Conqueror, Richard
the First.
Yeah. So at any rate, we're glad that you have decided to dip your toe on both sides of the living and the dead, and primarily you started to just kind of describe the process as coming from the trauma of being in places where great tragedy had occurred.
Yeah.
But there had to have been some process that brought you to a realization that you were a shaman or shaman. And what was that like? And what happened? And what kind of parts of your mind did awaken?
That's a really interesting question, and a very hard one to answer easily. But I've known there's something unusual about me since I was a little kid, because ever since I was very young, I haven't had a particularly normal life. I can remember being 6 months old, and I can remember being in my cot and various things coming to visit me. Even then, angels and demons. And there was one particular demon who used to announce itself by clumping across the floor. And when I saw Paranormal Activity, the second one, where the girl has grown hooves and clumps up the stairs. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Terrifying for me, because that was my very, very early childhood. I used to hear the clumping of hooves, and this thing used to come as I was falling asleep and take me off. I still have dreams now where I fly around a lot in my dreams, and I dream that I'm an angel, because people, when I talk to other people in my dreams, I kind of glow because their faces all go orange, and there's this light that moves around when I'm moving around. And people often say to me in my dreams, "Hey, you're an angel. Tell me this, tell me that. What's it like being an angel? Can you fly? Because you're." So there's a lot of angel chat that's always gone on in my dreams. And as I was growing up, I was very sensitive to atmospheres, and I realized that I used to see people who weren't there. I mean, I'm trying to kind of condense my life story into one sentence for you. It's really difficult because it's always been around. And as I became an adult, my mother was very encouraging. She worked as a healer. In fact, she used to run a healing center, and she was a fantastically good healer. She worked as a physiotherapist for 25 years and used to get all the basket cases, like the stroke victims and people who were in wheelchairs who couldn't speak or communicate or function. And she used to get them up and walking and talking, and pretty much 100% fixed after everyone else had given up on them. Because she was a very powerful healer. And she, without me really realizing, taught me an awful lot about the process of healing and about shamanism and about communicating with the dead. It was very much a normal thing in our household. And we had a lot of spirits around, and my mother and I used to communicate with the dead a lot. So for me, it's something I grew up with, which was very everyday for me. And by meeting other people as an adult and traveling in the way that I did and communicating with the dead as I did, on some amazing experiences through Chile after their earthquake, and went all the way down through Chile and sort of retrod the steps of the Spanish conquistadors, and met a lot of spirits in that process, and in Haiti with the dead talking to me. I realized that this is something that I should develop, and I trained formally with a shaman from Burkina Faso who's dead now, actually, called Malidoma Some, who became quite famous when he was alive, and lived in California for 30 years before he died. And I trained with an English psychic who has a PhD in the subject. I mean, it's the first one I've ever come across, but she has a PhD in psychic mediumship. And I trained with her for 5 years. So it's something that I applied myself to formally and worked at. And as I worked at it, it just got stronger and stronger.
The training part of it is kind of the fascinating part. Like we've talked to many psychics here, and they often refer to the third eye and opening the third eye, and their sort of training is basically centered around, in their terms, raising or lowering their vibration in order to open a third eye and communicate with other planes. Does that sound familiar to you? I mean, what is?
I mean, there's a reason the Hindus have a red dot right here.
Yeah,
it's basically, it's like that
right between the eyes.
Yeah, and you have a gland there, as you know all about this. You have the pineal gland there, which is the thing, and it's sensitive to light, and it's why people raise their foreheads to sunlight to greet it, because it's warming the pineal gland. And I work with the chakras, opening the chakras, encouraging that movement. And I've done work where we've photographed what we're doing with the Curlian camera, which works on the electromagnetic field in your body and translates that into a color. And you can photograph somebody's chakra points, which change color. And I've worked with students where we have been encouraging them to open their chakras under controlled circumstances, where they're protected from things floating in, because it's like opening a dam, it's like opening a tunnel, it's like opening the energetic fields around your body. And as we've worked with them, encouraging their chakras to start to work and to get the energy fields around their bodies to work rather than being sludgy and stopped and blocked, which is what gives everyone that sort of heavy feeling and depression and the sense of being trapped and low and working at a low vibrational level. The color of their chakras changes, especially up here, because when you're really working, when you're really connected to the divine, this is white, and it's like a light purple, and the colors of people's auras tell you a lot about what kind of person they are, how their energy is, and how they are as a person.
Do you see those without anything, like you said something about like you had equipment to do it, but is that something you just naturally see?
I don't see it as a color, but I'm 100% sense it. So when I look at somebody, and I'm looking at you, you get an imprint of what their chakra color coding would be like if you photographed it. I mean, I could tell you what it's going to be like, and I would probably get it pretty much spot on. Would you like to know the answer to that line?
We're dying to know.
Yeah, we're dying.
You have holes in your aura, and the reason you do is because you smoke. And when people smoke or take drugs, they develop holes in their aura. Their aura gets quite mucousy and sludgy and grey. And if I were to be working on you as a shamanic / Reiki healer, I would be working to repair those holes, encourage your energy to start moving, and the two energy helixes around your body, which go in opposite directions, up and down your body in opposite directions. When those two energy fields are swirling, think of the double helix of DNA. When those two energy fields are really swirling, your energy is very good, it's very up, and you're very protected. You're quite vulnerable. And my instinct would be to fix that for you, or use them to do that job for you.
So vulnerable as in how?
Vulnerable to attack by illness, by varying levels of negative energy, which is able to, at the moment, it's able to get in through your defenses naturally, because your defenses are a bit,
Broken.
Well, they're a bit like some old grey pants with some holes in.
Yeah.
So I'd want you to take those pants off your head and chuck them away, and repair the holes, get rid of the sludge. And to do that, you'd need to stop smoking.
Oh, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Of course it is. There you go. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
It's when I get drawn into somebody, it's very hard not to talk about this stuff, because it just kind of comes out.
Yeah. No, I like hearing it.
If someone is also kind of sensitive or has some medium affinity or ability, is that something that comes through too?
Yeah. I can spot people walking down the street. I mean, I can spot bad ones as well. I can spot Satanists. I can spot the children of Satan a mile off, and so can my dog. Interestingly enough, he barks. He barks at them, and I know that he's going to bark at them because he can see it. You see, he can see things around them because his eyes aren't looking at the person; that they follow the things that are around them. And I think, oh, I have to cross the road because he's going to bark, and then poof, off he goes. But with somebody who is angelic, he'll go up to them and sniff them, and want to be petted.
So if Sam and I were walking down the road, he would bark at me, and he would be happy with Sam.
Yeah, basically it.
Who says I'm angelic?
You see, Sam, your energy field is good. You are quite angelic. You do have a psychic ability, and you are very much related to Anglo-Saxon English royalty. I can see the connection to Richard I, because guess what? I rode with Richard I in this Crusades. So we probably met before.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean,
I like the sound of that.
I almost feel the slap of steel on the leather of a horse with you. And I can smell horses, and I can hear the jiggle and chink of armor as you ride. So yeah, you're right. You are related, and you're connected, and your connection to here is still strong through your lineage, because it always stays like that.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it is.
Lucky.
Yeah, so get that chainmail outfit, get a sword made, and put it in a glass case in your hall, and I guarantee that every time you go past it, your heart will leap. And if you ever come to London and go to the Tower of London, which has the most fantastic medieval display of armor, and it's got Henry VIII's actual armor in there. He's a very small guy, by the way. I'm like, he was tiny. He was under 5 feet tall and quite fat. And that's in there. And if you went in that room, I tell you, you'd probably almost pass out with the strength of your connection to it.
Well, my wife is dying for me to take her there. We just got back from Italy, and now she's like, we're going to the UK. We're going to go look at the castles. We're going to go look at London. We're going to do it all. So
you'd love it, because there's so much history to that. There's King Arthur's sort of history, and Guinevere in Glastonbury, because they were buried in the grounds of the abbey there before long before Henry VIII burnt it to the ground, because he went round and burnt all the Anglo-Saxon abbeys, the Protestant abbeys, because he wanted to do a deal with the Catholic Church in Rome. So he just wiped them all out, and they're buried there. You've got Tintagel, which was Arthur's seat, which is another castle. There's loads of stuff here, and all the rings, all the ancient stone rings around the country, which are on the ley lines.
Yeah,
the ley line from Glastonbury and the tour goes all the way up to Scotland, and they radiate out like the spokes of a wheel, and it's really interesting to see what's on those spokes. So yeah, you'd love it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm booking my trip. Let's do it. Now, that does bring up a great point, which is, it seems like every shaman that we've had on the program ends up also becoming a historian of sorts, and connecting past generations with current generations. It requires a lot of homework. How much of your time is devoted to exploring the history of a place or a family?
As much time as I can spare, and where it makes sense. I mean, I do it. I do part of it professionally for a TV series that we make. So we have the good excuse to go to places. But I have several bookshelves behind me, which you can see in the picture, which are all about the history of the Knights Templar, the occult, African magic. Actually, there's plenty of it here. The impact of black magic on London is enormous, and I have spent quite a lot of my time clearing houses in the centre of London, in the really sort of shishy, expensive bit in Chelsea and Mayfair, where all the rich people live, because there is a lot of it there, and there's a lot of it down a thing called the King's Road, which is like again a very sort of trendy, expensive part of London. And there was supposed to be a subway that ran from one end of it to the other, and they never built it because they started to dig the foundations, and they started digging up medieval plague victims. And then they found that the whole of that road is a series of mass burial grounds from when the Black Death, the medieval bubonic plague, killed about a third of the UK's population.
This wasn't just UK; it was like all
thousands of them buried there. And there is a connection between them and magic, and I've had some really weird experiences around there with clearing people's houses, and some of the time it's been like a scene out of a horror movie with what happens. People murder their wives, children get, I mean, I had a client who called me in because their son, who looks absolutely angelic, was in the park with them, and he said, he was sitting there with his parents, and he said, "I'm going to kill you," just like that, and it completely freaked them out, and they got me in to remove something had got into him, something really bad, really nasty, and it was, I mean, they were not far off having something very strange happen to them. And he went from being, I mean, I'm absolutely sure he wasn't schizophrenic or suffering from sort of mental illness, because he was such a lovely little boy. He's only 7. But when I got this thing out of him, he went nuts. I mean, it was classic sort of exorcism stuff.
Wow.
What did you actually remove from him? Was it actually like a
Demonic.
Demonic.
Big, black, stinking, hard-shelled, shiny, beetly, demonic thing. Yeah.
Oof. I mean, how long did that take? Was it like hours? Was it just like...
Yeah, it took quite a long time, because you have to find it, because what they do is that they... Do you remember that scene in the first Alien with John Hurt where that thing came out of his stomach?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but I spend a long time pretending that I don't know they're there, but using the shamanic energy, really the divine energy, to extract it, and eventually it will show itself when it thinks that you're not looking, and you have to grab it. You have to grab it like you're like catfishing.
Like noodling.
It's like grabbing a fish out of the water, because it'll be there for a second, and you just have to grab it at that second, and it won't. It's like you imagine pulling out a really heavy bag of trash out of a bin, like really heavy. You can feel the weight, and it stinks. And they try everything they can to put you off and revolt you and reject you, scare you, and you just have to keep going while you're protected by the divine, and pull the thing out. And
what do you do with it once you have it in your grasps?
You're going to ask me that. My spirit guide is a massive female black panther from the Amazon, and she's like, obviously you can't see it, but she is about 20 feet tall. You imagine a panther 20 feet tall, massive thing. And I pull these things out and I just throw them over my shoulder and she just rips them apart. She destroys them.
Kitty's
I mean,
got to
she's
eat.
a spirit. I mean, the way that she manifests herself as a panther, but she is a spirit, and she just chops them up, kills them. Because there's no point throwing a demon around.
Yeah.
It will jump into somebody else. I have made that mistake once because I did it with somebody else in the room, and it jumped into her, and I had to do the whole thing over again.
How did you find your spirit guide? How was the first time that she approached you? How did you guys connect? I mean, a 20-foot panther might be a little intimidating the first time around.
It was. I did it with the help, with the probably the inadvertent help of a friend of mine who's actually American. She's from Seattle originally. She just moved back there actually, and she works as a healer and she does massage and is the most extraordinary person. She can remember being dead. That she's talked about is so weird. She's described what it's like being dead, and she was working on me because I can't even remember why, but she was working on me, and I went into this kind of trance, and I was in the Amazon. I could hear everything, see everything, and that's when she presented herself to me for the first time, and it was just such a strange experience.
Is that your only spirit guide, or?
She's my main one. I have several. I think this person is. I think he works with a lot of different people, but he's a Tibetan monk, a very powerful one, and I think he's somewhere up there in terms of the deities, because there is a pecking order. It's like the realm of the archangels, and the hierarchy. I mean, there is definitely a hierarchy of the very high ones. The cherubim and the seraphim, and the archangels, and then Archangel Metatron sits at the top of the pyramid, and then works down through the other archangels like Raphael and Shamuel and it goes on and on. Gabriel, Boreal. So I think he's probably an archangel, but that's how he presents himself to me.
So would we need someone like you to, like, say, I want to know who my spirit guide is, or if I have one, would I come to someone like you and be like, okay, what do we need to do?
Yeah. When I'm working with a client, for whatever reason, I mean, I always ask people when they come and see me what your intention is. What do you want to get out of what we're about to do? Because them vocalizing that sets the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always different. But I would normally be shown people's past lives that are relevant to what we're doing, and it sort of it helps them understand what it is that they want to know. And then part of that, their spirit guide will work with me, and work with them and work with the others to help that person. So they'll appear, and I'll kind of see who they are, and then I'll tell them who I saw. And they often already know it because they already feel that themselves. So a lot of this is confirmation of half formed thoughts and half formed impressions and hunches that people have. So it's really helpful because they go, that's amazing that you think blah blah blah. So it's very valuable and positive because it's kind of an affirmation of a whole lot of things that someone might think that they might have not discussed before or shared with anybody, or haven't even wanted to bring it up because they're worried that their family or friends are going to think they're a nut.
I would love to know something about my past life. That would be cool. That would be cool to know. It would be interesting.
Yeah.
Something cool to research and something to You know what I mean? To try to, I mean, that would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should take that one offline.
Well, then, yeah, certainly that's not something we have to do right now.
No. I was just saying it in general. I wasn't asking. I was just saying in general.
I'd be very happy to discuss that with you.
The mechanics of what you do is also very fascinating to us, and you kind of touched on it already with the kind of explanation of a little bit of how exorcisms go and how you dispose of the demonic presence. But that's not all you do, right? I mean, there's a lot of other things that you go that are part of what you do as a shaman and your process. What are some of the other things that have come up that kind of stand out to you?
Well, I guess they're all subsets of what it is that I do in terms of communication. I mean, there are specific things like healing somebody's specific issue, and it might be a physical thing. Like they might have cancer, and I can't heal people from cancer, but I can give them a lot of comfort, and it helps. Put it that way. And I've had a number of clients who've come to see me up until the point where they die, and I've actually sat in on their deaths because they've requested me to be there, and I've helped them pass over. That's an amazingly humbling experience. Sometimes it's a bit strange for their families, but generally speaking, their families got to know me quite well by then, so I've become part of the family, but it's I mean, for instance, if this is what you mean, when I was in Haiti making my documentary about the Haiti earthquake in 2010, there were 90,000 people lying dead or they reckon around 90,000 people in Haiti, and I went to the cathedral in Port-au-Prince on a Sunday morning, which I think was pretty much exactly to the hour when it had happened on the 2 weeks before, because I think it started happening about 7 o'clock in the morning, and there were about 1,500 people at mass in the cathedral, and the cathedral had a really heavy concrete roof, like a lot of the buildings in Haiti, which fell down on them and killed almost everybody. So there were, I don't know, 1,300, 1,400 dead people lying under the rubble. And I could see them. I mean, I could literally see them as they were decaying. It's not very nice. And when I was standing there, they just suddenly all started to talk to me. And it was too many, but they were saying, you know, we're really scared. We're just waiting here. We don't understand what's happening to us. I mean, it was incredibly educational for me because this happened quite early on in my experience. It was one of the things that really took me forward. And I thought, I can't do this now. And I actually didn't really even know what it was what that meant. So that night, we were sleeping next to the runway at the airport, which was kind of covered with military jets and C-130s and C-17s and C-5s and the rest of it, massive jets. And we were right next to CNN. And I had a couple of security guys, and I said, look, I think I need to go back to the cathedral tonight. Is that possible? And they said, yeah, we can do that. I mean, bear in mind that it was pretty lawless and dark, and most of it had fallen down, and it was in a state of chaos. And it's not exactly the safest places at the best of times. It was a bit crazy. But anyway, we went back. They were amazing because they were sort of navigating their way around a city that had fallen down. I mean, they worked there, so they knew the place like the back of their hand. We got to the cathedral again, and I could see all these. I could actually see all these people, these souls, milling around. It was like, you know, market day, but there was nobody there, and my heart was pounding. And when something like that is about to happen, right? And when I sense something angelic, my heart begins to really pound. If I'm about to heal somebody who is in very serious need of healing, it makes my heart really thump, and my heart was really thumping. And I was taking pictures, and there was nothing, and then suddenly there was everything. I mean, like there was this sort of great cloud of orbs that just suddenly went like that. And the security guys were looking behind me, and they looked into the camera. They could see these orbs. It's like great white milky haze of orbs suddenly appear from nowhere. And they went, "What's that? What's that?" And I said, "Oh, one just went behind my head." Can you believe that? Did you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Right. That was an orb. That's about the third one that's I've seen while we've been chatting. You'll probably see another one. Keep watching, because they're around. How mad is that, right? Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah. That happens when this, because it's the energy and the connection, and people start showing up. That was amazing, wasn't it? When you play that back, you'll see that. Make a note of the time, because you can play that back. So I knew that I needed to help them pass over, and this is one of the things that I do, is I help stuck spirits pass over. Not always an easy process, because some of them don't want to go, because some of them don't want to confront the Akashic record and the record of their deeds, because they haven't been particularly good people. I did this with a murderer who lived near me, actually, who tried to murder me. Long story. He ended up dead on my doorstep. How comic is that? And followed me down the street as a spirit, and wanted to move on, but he really didn't want to go. Anyway, that was another day and another story. These souls were mixing with the angels, because souls, when I photograph them, are round, sort of see-through discs, like classic orbs with a kind of filigree pattern inside them, and sometimes other spirits inside that orb. But the angels are cuboid, because when they're radiating, they're a cube. So they look like a cube, and the spirits are circular. And I could see the angels all amongst this great big cloud of souls. And I just did it instinctively. And I realized this is something I knew. It's the first time I'd done it. So I realized it's something I just knew how to do instinctively. I connected them to spirit, connected them to the angels, and it was like the waves on a shore. So when the tide's coming in, the waves break and they come towards you, and you can feel that sort of energy and the movement of the water. And then as they started to recede, it was like the sea going out. It got quieter. There were fewer milky orbs flying about, and then there were none, and it was quiet, and they'd gone, and they had all gone. But I made a mistake, because of my inexperience. I remained connected, as with that sort of silver cord. I remained connected to the divine, and to where they'd gone, and left my battery, if you like, running, and it almost killed me. I got really sick just before we left. I got really weak, and I didn't understand what was happening. Got on the plane, which was crazy, because the airport was shut down. We had to find it in the dark. And as we flew back towards Britain, I just got worse and worse and worse. And they were talking about diverting the plane, because I was pouring sweat and in a terrible state. And I did get back to Britain. They didn't divert the plane. And the next day I went straight down to Glastonbury, down to the tour, which is connected to Archangel Michael, and cast them off and let them go. And it was like sort of casting off a ship. And I immediately started to feel better. It was like the lights came back on. It's an incredible experience. And I was just basically learning how to do that handover the hard way, because no one had taught me, and I just did it instinctively. And I think it almost killed me.
Wow. That's amazing. That's an amazing experience. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I did review the tape already. I've got a monitor right here. Yeah.
Did you see it?
Orb. Yep. You see it.
That's why I was just looking for it too.
Well, fantastic. Nothing like a bit of affirmation, eh?
How many minutes back was it?
It was about the between 40 and 41 minute marks. So, yeah,
It's awesome.
check it out.
So did you get that kind of you went and investigated the Bermuda Triangle?
Right.
So when you were there with your sensitivity and everything, what were you feeling and getting by going into there? Because the way it is there, I mean, it's got to kind of throw your senses off a bit, I'm sure, right?
It is the most extraordinary triangle, and because we were approaching it in a scientific way, we commissioned the believe it or not, the Danish Meteorological Office had bought time on a weather satellite, and they were tracking the Earth's electromagnetic field as part of a 2-year program where I think they were doing like 25,000 circuits of the Earth, building up a picture of any. They're looking for anomalies in the electromagnetic field. That is obviously, you guys understand this, but it's completely different from the magnetic field, which it's what even actually no one understands how magnetism works either, but it's different. It's the electromagnetic field. It's like the the current around the Earth, and they found, and the guy walked into the room and he said, "Look, there you go." He said, "There's a 0.6 drop in the electromagnetic field of the Earth there." And guess what it was? The Bermuda Triangle. And this is a scientist, and all he'd done is he got his computer to analyze it, spat it out of a printer, and that's what came out. I mean, I didn't like draw it in with a pencil, go, "Oh, film that." It's like, yay. It was the Bermuda Triangle. From Miami down to Grand Cayman. Is it Grand Cayman? No, not Grand Cayman. Grand Bahama, and then Costa Rica, right? Bermuda Triangle, and it is a very strange place. I mean, we flew it actually. We flew it in an Avenger bomber. Can you believe that? We found a guy who'd renovated an Avenger bomber, which was exactly the same as the Avenger bombers that they lost in Flight 19. I mean, it's a very famous Bermuda Triangle story. That Flight 19 got lost and they never found them. And they appeared at the beginning of Close Encounters, where Francois Truffaut is in the Sahara Desert and they find Flight 19. Those bombers, and we put cameras all over the plane. We got a contemporary of the guys who would have flown that in 1947 or whenever it was, just after the end of the Second World War. And he was a contemporary of them. I mean, he was about 75, I think. Bless him. And he flew this thing for me. I sat in the navigator seat behind him, and my sound recorders was in Bombay. And we flew the same. We took off at the same time from Fort Lauderdale. We flew the same course down to Chicken Shoals Island, and the weird thing was at 4:10 we started having navigation problems because we were doing it the same way. We were flying on a compass timer and a turn and slip, just flying at old school, exactly like them. And the pilot said, "My turn and slip indicator has jammed," which it had. I could see it. It's sort of like a Mercury thing that swings to show you whether you're flying sideways or not. And it had stuck over to one side, and his compass was going crazy. He said, "I don't know where I am." I mean, we started sort of saying the same sort of things that Flight 19 said, like, "I'm lost, I don't know where I am," all that kind of stuff. And we didn't. And the weird thing about those islands, the weird thing is they all look the same. And I can see how, if you were trying to navigate by recognizing where you were, it'd be really hard. So we switched on our GPS sat nav and used that. And the chase plane, who was filming us, started getting exactly the same problems at exactly the same time.
Wow.
I mean, when I got back, my boss, who was the CEO of the production company, said, "Come on, Simon, it's like, you're just trying to find a story." And I said, "Mate, watch the footage." And he watched the footage, and he went, "That's really weird," right? Yeah, so we met people who had been out on boat trips, like in 2 big power boats, who swore blind to me that 1 minute their other boat was there, and the next minute it had gone. And I mean, there were like 12 people sitting around a table who I met, and they all, like said, cross my heart. We can show you the details of the boat that disappeared. It just disappeared.
Crazy.
Wow.
And we were off Nassau, looking for a DC-3 on the bottom, which actually was a film prop. But I mean, we thought it'd be a really cool thing to film. And while we were looking for it, the compass on the boat started doing that, and the navigation charts for that area say no magnetic north. They actually warn you, and he's right. There is no magnetic north. It just goes like this. So yeah, there's that we worked really hard to try and get to the bottom of it and to make it scientific, and we found a lot of hard evidence to suggest there's something very strange about that area, which was great because it made a great show. I mean, it did really, really well. I mean, people still watch it now. It's become a legend.
I'm glad that nobody got hurt, but that is really, really cool.
No, we didn't. There have been other times in other countries where I have got hurt. Actually, I mean, we've been shot at. I've still got scars on my here from a grenade that was chucked at us in Pakistan when we discovered the very early days of the Taliban up in the mountains, because that's where they were all being developed. We didn't even know who they were then, but they just, they shot at us. And there have been a few quite hairy moments.
Go ahead.
You were just in Pakistan, you're investigating, you're doing anything, and I just could imagine like a grenade rolling up. It's just like, oh, what are we gonna do? Take cover.
Yeah, well, okay. Now here's the really funny thing: is that I thought that I was with a whole load of builders, right, who were my guide, because like all these things. Sorry, it's a really complicated, long story. I'd met this guy from Pakistan in London who was the sort of unofficial mayor of a town called Bagh, B-A-G-H, which is in the eastern side of Pakistan, at the foothills of the Himalayas. And I'd interviewed him, and he said you can't go out to Pakistan at the moment on your own, white guy. He said you're not going to come back. And I went, okay. And he said, but I'll give you some people to look after you. You'll be fine. My brother will come and get you. He'll sort out some visas for you tomorrow, which was a Saturday, and he did. I went to see him at the embassy, and he had all our visas. It took like 12 hours. And he said, they'll look after you. And I got to Islamabad, to his house, and it was full of all these guys who were building his house, right? They all sort of, we all slept on the floor together. And so I thought I was with a whole load of local builders. And when these guys started shooting at us and lobbed a grenade, they opened the back they had a Subaru, it was like a 4-wheel drive Subaru Impreza, I think it was. And they opened the boot, and it was full of guns. Right? AK-47s. And they all got these things out. And I could see that they were used to using them. It was all very organized, and they weren't that sort of like fussed. Got all these guns out. I started shooting back at these guys who were shooting at us. And it turns out they were all ex-military special forces. So happy days. I mean, they saved my life. I mean, wow. The fact that I did have them there saved my life. Otherwise, we'd have been killed.
That's incredible.
Mad, isn't it?
Gosh. All right. We're starting to run low on time, so I do want to talk about your project, Ghost Next Door. It's a documentary series.
Yes.
Tell us how that was conceived and how production was along and what we.
Well, I had wanted to do a ghost investigation series for a very long time, for several years, and I hadn't got around to it. And I couldn't figure out how to do it, and I couldn't find anybody who wanted to do it because they just didn't quite get what we were about. Because a lot of people kind of want you to fail because they don't want you to actually find anything that's going to, give their viewers nightmares. Mm-hmm. God forbid you actually tell the truth. Yeah. Right? I mean, literally, people here, commissioners said, well, I don't mind, we'll commission it as long as we can just make fun of you and it's a disaster. And I said, but it probably won't be. He said, well, not interested then. I think that's quite satanic, you see. I think that's kind of like keeping a lid on the truth.
Right.
I was walking around this big, beautiful lake in the Lake District with my friend Ed Simons, who I've known for years and years and years, who's actually quite a legendary producer. He's made a lot of very big movies. And he produced Live Aid, actually. One of the things he did.
Wow.
Wow.
And I was chatting to Ed and saying, how can I do it? And he said, I've got a friend who might take it. I said, well, what should we call it? I can't remember how we arrived at the name, but we were looking out over the lake, and I think one of us said, why don't we call it Ghost Next Door? Because it's about finding local famous ghosts. And whoever came up with it, I'm not sure who it was, it might have been Ed. I went, love the idea. And his friend did commission it, who had a TV channel. And we made a 12-part series, initial 12-part series with two other psychics. A Scottish lady called Jenny Mackay, who's extraordinary. She becomes other people. Really weird. It's really weird to see because she does become them. Her face changes. And a Brazilian, a daughter of a very famous Brazilian psychic called Isabella Besk. And we went all over the UK to Scotland, all over England, and we just did this country. And we had the most extraordinary time. And because the guy who owned the TV channel was kind of up for it, we were able to do exactly what we wanted. I mean, like we were able to sort of, hunker down and sort of get weird and investigate, an area where witches used to live up on a thing called Pendle Hill, which is like an escarpment in Lancashire, who were very famously hanged in the 1600s as part of the big witch hunt that they had then. Alice Nutt. Alice Nutter? No, Alice Nutt, that's right. Alice Nutt was one of them. There's a statue of her in the local village. And that was very strange because Jenny became one of them, started to cry her eyes out, and then wanted to go and join them. Anyway, you had to be there. It's really strange. We basically were able to do what we wanted, which was so fantastically liberating because I spent, my whole working life making documentaries where I've had to write to people's, to the commissioning editor's brief, and you have to work with standards and practices who make you prove that everything is real, and you have to have references and you have to annotate everything. It's a lot of work, and it's quite limiting in a way because you have to do that. But we had none of that. We just did what we liked, and I said what I liked, and then and actually I edited it myself. I mean, physically cut the whole series, and it went out as exactly as I wanted, and it was amazing. And I think we're about to do it again in a couple of months' time with a much bigger budget. Who'd believe?
Even better.
Even better. And I want to do quite a few American stories. I mean, there's Skinwalker Ranches in there, and there are a few other sort of really famous, very spooky places that I want to investigate around the States and South America and Europe. I mean, there's so much out there. There's so much information.
So Dream Films is the production company?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna throw this little promo website up here.
Yeah, no, that's great. That is exactly who is financing the next one. German producer who, there we go. There are the girls. There's me looking freaked out. Now that face I'm pulling, that was a still from a moment where I was doing a thing called scrying, when you look into a mirror and you get the reflection and you go into what you see. And I was looking at somebody completely different, and it came into me. And as it came into me, I just kind of leapt up and deflected it. Everybody screamed, and it was a very weird moment because that isn't me. That person there is not me.
That is wild.
Yeah. So it
Kyle-
came into you, and then you deflected it out, and then
Well, I kind of like bumped it off because I saw it coming. It was trying to jump into me because that room was so. We were in a kids' school where a lot of them had been very badly treated, and in fact, a couple of them had died in the school. 150 years, 200 years ago, and while we were doing that in that room, all the coat hangers on the coat rail started to swing and clack into each other, and we filmed it. And we filmed the whole thing in one sequence, so there was no editing. And they just started to swing more and more and started to hit each other. And I could actually hear them behind me going clank, 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 clank. And we turned around and filmed it, and we watched them swinging more and more and more. It's really strange. And then after the weird thing with the face, they all stopped completely dead. They just all stopped at once, like.
yeah, it's got to be freaky.
It was freaky.
Kyle and I did a ghost hunt at a school, but it wasn't nearly scary. It wasn't scary at all, honestly. There's probably like what 24 people there, Kyle.
Oh, if we'd been there, we'd have made it scary. I mean, it's you don't want too many people milling about because it completely mashes the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that we did, we were normally the only 3 people in the building, give or take. I mean, sometimes we'd have somebody who was a facilitator who actually helped it happen. Because we were in another building, which was an old fort, like a defensive fort down in Weymouth on the south coast of England, all night. And we were in the gun room, and we had 3 electromagnetic field meters. We had my analog one with a needle and 2 digital ones that had a digital printout. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, we had them all lined up. All the power in the whole. We'd switched off the power at the mains downstairs, so the whole place was isolated. We were in pitch dark the whole evening, and all the meters suddenly went woo. And I could feel this thing coming. I mean, I could feel this not very nice, actually, I have to say, thing coming in. And I had this whole dialogue with it, and it was literally making the meters bounce as I spoke to it. And I was tussling with it, I suppose, really is the best way I could describe it. And the meters were just going like off the scale. And the guy who owned the other 2 meters, who is a professional investigator, Dave Golden, who's from Weymouth, was going, well, I mean, like he was using a lot of bad words and saying, I have never seen anything like that before. And he was so freaked out that he went back the next day, lined up his meters again to see if there was anything that was monkeying around with them, and he got nothing. And the power was on as well. I mean, like all the electricity in the fort had been switched back on, and he had his 2 meters in the same place, and he got nothing. Not a diddly squat.
That's some good evidence there.
Yeah. So there we are. Oh, I'm exhausted now.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic. So, if people are looking for you, we've got the website for the show.
Yep.
Anywhere else that people can find you?
Yes, they can find me at accidentalexorcist.com, which is another one of my websites, which explains what I do as an exorcist and how that process works. accidentalexorcist.com.
We need to get you back and dive into that.
Yeah, well, it's a big subject, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as I'm sure you find every week. There is just like so many different ways of coming at the same subject, and it's a massive subject. And it's the thing is that to myself, I have proved over and over again that this is a real thing. I've photographed it, we've videoed it, we've experienced it. I've seen clients go from basket cases to little rays of sunshine in an hour. It's harder to kind of document that, but I have. There we go. And it's real. I'm here to tell you that there is a reason why all this stuff that people dismiss as being, fanciful, an excuse to try and make us feel that we're not alone in the universe. We're not alone in the universe. And the universe is a great big organic, living, breathing thing. And our own Earth is a sensitive, sentient thing. And if you can have AI that's developing, a consciousness, which is a whole lot of, zeros and ones and liquid computers, you can have an Earth that feels. And, is it not showing its displeasure and anger at the moment?
Great question.
I think it is with global warming.
Tune in next week where we talk about Gaia and revenge of the planet.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Simon. I know it's probably getting close to dinner time or bedtime or something wherever you're at.
It is. I can hear something going on in the kitchen, which is good.
And we wish you a wonderful weekend. We're getting ready to dive into Father's Day this weekend. And I don't know if you have anything like that, but
you two guys have a great weekend.
Thank you so much for joining us. To our audience, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and we'll bring you more content just like this. And hopefully we have Simon back on to talk some more about his exciting adventures in the world of shamanic healing and filmmaking in dangerous locations where people are shooting at him.
I'm trying to give it up these days. It's I think I used up about 8 of my 9 lives.
Yeah. And until next time, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.